Hey everyone, today we're going to check out Tommy Paul's serve. Paul right now is 14 in the world and he's a player who always goes a little bit under the radar. In terms of serve mechanics, there's many things he does really well that you can learn from too as well. So we're going to cover basically grip, swing, body, toss, and then if you stick around till the end, we'll actually do a mini comparison where we compare a player's serve versus Tommy Paul's. All right, here we go. So let's watch it together. And now let's slow it down a little bit and we'll get started. Okay, so the first component that won't come as a surprise for anyone listening is the grip. You need to have your grip on a continental. If you want to learn to bring your racket on edge, you need to use a continental grip. There's just no way around it. The second part about the continental is that it just helps set your hand and then by extension your elbow and shoulder into the right position to really get the most amount of external rotation in this phase so that the internal rotators are put on stretch, and then you can bring the racket on edge. So many players here set their racket with a forehand grip on bevel number 3 and they just push it forward into the contact. So you need to get that grip into a continental. So let's talk a little bit about his swing here. Paul has a bit of a scissors where his arms separate outwards to the side. So meaning his left arm goes here, his right arm goes back this way. If you look at someone like a Ben Shelton, his arms will actually come up, not together. His tossing arm will be in the lead, but many players do use scissors when they are serving. What I want you to see is the release point for the toss. The toss release point should be roughly around your eyes. And then we're going to talk about the timing to contact. Okay, so Ryan Reedy over at 2 Minute Tennis has a toss to contact timer and he sets it at 0.6 to 0.9. So if we look at Paul, he'll fall right at the upper edges of that limit. So right from the toss to where the ball comes out of his hand to contact, it should fall between 0.6 to 0.9 seconds. And you know, we've talked about this many times. You want a toss that's efficient and repeatable. One of the issues if you start tossing way too high is that the variances increase, meaning if you toss it a little bit to the left compared to the last toss, it's going to go further off to the left. Then also, the higher you toss the ball, the faster it's going to fall through the air. We're not even considering the sun, the wind, and then score pressure. In general, if you don't have access to a timer, just a really simple way of doing it is go out and video yourself, put a line from where the ball peaks to where you're making contact with the ball. That distance really should be no more than a racket's length. And even then I would say that toss could be brought down a little bit. But that's one thing that Paul does well is he keeps that toss within that range of 0.6 to 0.9 seconds. Moving on to the swing here. So we talked a little bit about him having a scissors, but really after he gets his racket up, I want you to watch a few things. So notice that his knuckles are facing up, so it's either palm down or knuckles up, whatever cue works for you. And it's really important that you're able to get your racket into this position because you need to be able to clear your head with the strings facing towards the right side of the court. Here, notice how his string bed is facing towards the right side of the court. As the racket goes over your head, this is where you start to go into external rotation, where the internal rotators are put on stretch. And then we'll talk a little bit of what the body does, but I want you to watch his swing path. It's actually very interesting if you watch a really high level serve in slow motion, you'll notice that the racket travels quite a distance and it travels away from the body before coming up and around into the contact. But it's really interesting when you show players who want to hit the ball well on their serve, just what kind of range of motion is required in the shoulder to hit the serve well. It's quite a lot. And what I actually want to talk to you a little bit more about is what Paul does with his body. So I want you to watch here on the left. As the hands go up, the body sinks down. So it should almost work together here. So as the hands are lifted up, he starts to load downwards with his body. Now, there's a few more kind of details we need to add in here. I see many players I work with really mess up this timing of what they do with their body and with their hands. As the hands go up, the body has to go down. And really, if we're focusing in on his body, there's a couple things we are looking for. So the first one is that shoulder over shoulder rotation, where if we look here, if we just place a little circle on his back right hip, it's really about the vertical velocity that you can generate through the ground upwards and how fast you can get that energy that's stored in the hip into the rest of the stroke. And in terms of the timing, as the hands are up, now it almost works the other way. So the hands will start to fall and the body will start to go up. So when the hands start to fall, the body starts to go up, and that's where we should see that right hip going upwards here. And this is referencing Kovac's research, where he speaks about it's really how much energy you can store in the back hip and how fast you can get it outwards into the contact. Look at how far his racket is dropping. It's actually pretty nuts. It's almost getting down to his knee. So he's really got a great amount of external rotation. The internal rotators are really on stretch, and from Bruce Elliott's research, I think it accounts for around 40% of total serve velocity. So the more you can get into this position where you're externally rotated, the internal rotators are on stretch, the faster you can get the racket moving into the contact. And then the other thing I want to point out to you is look at his power line. So this is a phrase from Steve Smith, is that from your nose to your toes, you want your body segments facing 45 degrees to the right. I work with a lot of players and they over rotate at the contact. They get their body facing the court at the contact, but really you want to be 45 degrees to the right. We can see it on this side view as well. Look at his body segments, they're 45 degrees to the right. And then the other part of the power line is, as best as you can, you should try and get almost a straight line from, I know this is a little bit beyond contact, but almost a straight line from your body segments into the contact. Now let's take a look at a club level player and how he's hitting the ball and really what he could learn from Tommy Paul's serve. So the first thing we'll do is we'll just take a look So let's watch it. And now let's get started. The first thing I want to speak to you about is his swing. You can really see the difference between the amount of external rotation into internal rotation that Tommy Paul gets versus the player on the left. And yes, I know we're comparing a professional to a club level player, but that's the connection I want you to make as well with whatever level you play at. Why is Tommy Paul a professional? One of the reasons is because he serves so well. Why does he serve so well? Because there are technical things he does that separate him from players who play at a lower level. There's no secret or magic or mystery behind it. We can see it, we can try to learn from it, and we can try to emulate it. Here, the player on the left just isn't getting as deep of a racket drop, which just means his racket doesn't travel as far a distance into contact. Why are we talking about distance? Because if you can get that racket traveling further in the same period of time, that means it's traveled faster into the contact. And the second thing I want to point out as we move towards analyzing the body of the player on the left, you can tell from how he's set up, I know the angle's not perfect, basically he'll have almost no shoulder over shoulder rotation into contact. He's very flat with how he's setting up his shoulders. The way it's described is there's very little energy coming from the ground through his hips, through his torso, into the contact. And the other part about his swing is look at what he's doing with his left hand. The left hand is collapsing way too early, and yes, his racket's a little bit too far along in the swing. His tip should actually be facing a little bit more this way, the same way Tommy Paul's is. But look at his left hand, okay? It's going to start falling so soon. He's basically collapsed his torso, and from here, he's just jumping up into the contact. It's not an efficient use of the ground and the body to hit the ball well. So there you go. Hope you found it valuable. That was just a mini breakdown. I get a lot more into detail with the stroke analysis that I offer to players, where we basically put you side by side with a player and compare your stroke to a high level player or an efficient level stroke. And then you also get a personalized written review and a classroom demonstration of how you can fix your inefficiencies. Just to recap, Tommy Paul has a simple serve, and he's definitely a technical model that you can learn from and you can emulate. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope to see you all soon.